Ladies and gentlemen, as Kate said, I'm the chairman of the English Democrats.
We need some of you gorgeous men. You're all failing. Don't be putting your names on a postcard to me. Get yourselves round the back quickly. They're going to shut us down and you want to hear what Robin's doing. Please don't come across the stage. No, please. No, get off the stage, sir. We don't know you. Go round the back. Please, guys, round the back. You want to hear what Robin's going to say. We're peaceful.
Yes, so the English Democrats are attempting to be the voice for England. We feel we need a voice for England. If you think about the way that the coronavirus legislation has been dealt with, we have got Matt Hancock. Matt Hancock, anybody? He's the health secretary in the British government, and yet the only place he's got power is in England. Our lockdown regulations are for England only. The Welsh have their own lockdown regulations, the Scottish have their own. We in England do not have a voice, and we need it. We need a democratic voice for England. But ladies and gentlemen, as Kate said, I'm also a solicitor, and I'm trying to bring a case to court to challenge the government on their illegal, unconstitutional behaviour. We do have a crowd justice funding group, so go and have a look at that. It's called The Coronavirus Act 2020 is null and void. The legislation, ladies and gentlemen, it's worth thinking about the timeline of how we got here, because it tells you quite a lot about what's actually been going on. It leads you to question what the government, the media, and all the rest have been telling us. I think the first thing to bear in mind is the media. Before any mention of lockdown occurred, the government got Ofcom to tell the media that they were not to report any contrary narratives. That is why you never hear anything about people who are challenging what's going on. It's pretty unlikely much of what we're doing today will be reported in the mainstream media. Even if you look around, there's a huge crowd here. That won't get reported. And that's because they're not reporting contrary narratives, thanks to Ofcom, thanks to the government's orders. Next, how do we actually get to a situation where the government came out with all this lockdown stuff? So, if you think back to before March, they were saying that we weren't going to panic. We were probably going to do something very similar to the very sensible Swedes that you heard from earlier. You know, they haven't locked down their country. They haven't crashed their economy. They haven't thrown away all their liberties. But yet, their results are far better than ours, even on the official statistics. It's worth thinking about. Only the last couple of days, the Office of National Statistics, the government's own body for telling us what's going on statistically, it said that actually you were 13 times more likely to get a problem with flu than with what the government's challenging with the coronavirus.
Say something about the Swedes. About Sweden, can I say a little thing? I want to correct one thing about Sweden. Our numbers are much better than official because we are world champions in one sport, and that is killing the elderly. As an old Viking tradition, and we killed very many people with midazolam and morphine.
I don't know whether actually the Swedes have done that, because it's worth bearing in mind that what NHS England did on the 19th of March is they ordered the hospitals to discharge all their so-called bed blockers, the elderly.
There's 16 riot vans, guys. 16 riot vans round the back. Remember, we are peaceful. They cannot do anything if you stay within the law.
We've got three groups of people here, the guys in front, the guys and ladies in front, people over here to the left, and people over here to the right. They will all secure the stage with your help. Each and every one of you are members of the public and you have civil rights. So stand up for them and help the security and allow this event to take place.
And we've also got Robin Tilbrook. When you were all sitting on your toilet rolls at home catching up on your Netflix, he was here from 10 a.m. to make sure that we had the law on our side. Let's hear it for Robin!
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. So I was saying about the 19th of March order. The NHS England, at the government's direction, no doubt, though nobody put their names to it, it ordered the hospitals to discharge the old people into the old people's homes, even if the doctors knew they had got coronavirus. So it's now thought that something like 20,000 people died in the old people's homes, mostly as a result of that either reckless or deliberate order. So I think we certainly present a good challenge, if it's a good one, to the Swedes in terms of doing down our old people. It's a disgraceful situation that should have happened. But think back to the 13th of March, because that was the day. In the morning, the government was still saying, don't panic. They were going to have the Cheltenham Race Festival and various football and other sporting matches. By the afternoon, they were full panic, and they were saying they were going to stop us having elections until next year. Now, just think about that, ladies and gentlemen. Stop us having elections in a country that is proud of being a democracy. We didn't stop having by-elections in the First or the Second World War. We had a general election when we were at war with Japan in 1945. We had a general election in 1919 at the height of a real pandemic, the Spanish flu, which killed more than 250,000 people in England. We had a general election, ladies and gentlemen, whilst that was going on. This government, this state, the powers that be, they've said we can't have an election until next May. Any election, not even a by-election. That tells you quite a lot about where we're going, I think, with our politics, if we don't do something about it. But getting back to the development, so 13th of March, they're starting to panic, they say. 23rd of March, Boris comes on television and tells us that he's locking the whole country down with immediate effect. Boris had no power as Prime Minister to lock the country down. No power. It was a bluff. It wasn't true. But we then started getting the police and so on enforcing it as if it already was true. 23rd of March was when he said that. The very next day, in Parliament, they produce their emergency legislation, which they say is their emergency legislation, the coronavirus bill, 370 pages of it. Now you imagine how long it took to write 370 pages or thereabouts of closely written statutory wordage, which has the most wide-ranging powers in it that you could imagine. It is far wider in terms of the powers granted to the executive, to the government, than anything that was granted in either the First or the Second World War under the Emergency Powers Act or the War Powers Act. It is that It is that far-reaching. It is enormously powerful. The ministers can now rewrite the law without talking to anybody about it, without dealing with it, Parliament letting us know that that's what they're doing. They can just rewrite the law. They've rewritten the law on various things that have nothing whatsoever to do with the coronavirus or any alleged emergency. That's the next thing, though, ladies and gentlemen. The government has refused to declare this as an emergency. Now, why is that, I ask? Well, the answer is, if they had called it an emergency, then there was already an Emergency Powers Act, the Civil Contingencies Act. The Civil Contingencies Act, however, allowed Parliament to remain supervising and observing and generally involved in the process of producing regulations. Boris and his government clearly didn't want Parliament to have any role in deciding what was going to be the regulations that we're supposed to be all complying with. He didn't want there to be any democratic input into it. So, what does he do? He pushes for Parliament to pass the Coronavirus Act in 2 days without reading. They got no chance to read 370 pages of it. It was just passed on the nod. These immense powers. What happens then reveals everything you need to know about how bad the emergency was, how much it was essential to pass that legislation straight away in those 2 days. Because the very next day, the government produced the first of their coronavirus regulations, and they produced that under a 1984 Act. 1984, ladies and gentlemen. For those of you that's read the book 1984, we're in a country ruled by regulations from a 1984 Act. And rightly so, because those regulations are really wide-ranging. They are almost a destruction of all our liberties. And that's been done under regulations, under an act that was about dodgy goods coming in from the docks where they were infected and things like that. It wasn't about locking down the whole country. So we had all these regulations. The latest ones published at 10:30 on Sunday night. They are so complicated, ladies and gentlemen, that even as a lawyer of over 30 years, it's quite hard to read them and understand what on earth they're talking about. They are really complicated. Why are they so complicated? It seems to me it's obvious. The government doesn't actually want us to know what our rights are. They just want us to do what they say, be sheep, wear the masks, and do as we're told. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not very keen on wearing the mask, but if I'm going to wear a mask, I'm going to wear this one. I'm going to wear this one. What do you think?
I'm going to put it on for 2 minutes. This will be the only mask I've ever put on since this unlawful lockdown, I can absolutely assure you. And I'm going to do it for a camera shoot just for Robin.
Right up in there. Thank you, Kate. Our beautiful model. Doesn't it tell us though what lies we're being led by? That it should, even the core legislation has been passed by telling Parliament that it was absolutely essential to pass it in 2 days, whereas they'd actually obviously got the regulations already in their back pockets, ready to produce the very next day. The other thing that was quite interesting was they'd also got the guidance in their back pockets, ready to produce the very next day after they'd passed the Coronavirus Act. And that guidance, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, is completely different, or in many respects different, to what the actual rules said. So, for instance, you heard an awful lot about essential journeys and having to exercise near your house and only being allowed to go out once a day in the guidance. None of that was in the rules at all. It was completely different. Where are we now? The government's still producing all these rules and regulations, almost a torrent of them, and what happens? They're getting more and more complicated, more and more difficult to understand, and they keep changing what the rules are. I think that's deliberately to keep people not able to understand what their rights are. It is interesting that you can't really understand them, because that is the classic tactic right across recent history, where a state doesn't want its citizens to feel that it's got any rights. And so our liberties are under attack. And it seems to me that one of the things that we've got to try is to get the courts to rule that these unlawful, unconstitutional rules are wrong and invalid. And that's what we're going to do. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
I missed it. I was saying there's a reverend here. This gentleman here, did a video and it hit about 5,000 hits in about an hour. And we've got to thank him for getting a lot of people here today. Thank you to Robin Tilbrook. Let's hear it for the man fighting for us through the courts. Robin. Liam Galvin got 125,000 people here. Let's give him a shout. You heard Robin Tilbrook. I'm just going to say one thing. Everybody, go on to Amnesty International. Look up the Red Army's tactic, the 3Ds. They were fantastic at overpowering the prisoners and breaking them. Those 3Ds: disability, dependency, dread. Disability, they've got all of us thinking we're dirty, diseased, virus-ridden individuals. They're telling us we can spread a virus that doesn't even exist, and we have to wear a rag across our gobs. The second one, dependency. They're telling us that we need to listen to the lying liars of lies government and the BBC. And there's lockdowns and curfews, because remember, Mr. Corona can tell the time and read the calendar. Then they have us in dread. People are losing their businesses. People are using food banks while Boris Johnson's still fat. People are very soon going to lose their homes. They're going to be evicted. When the furlough ends, people are going to start having their houses repossessed. If you are standing together with your fellow man and not thinking about yourself, you will not allow it. You will stand at the end of your street and not allow them to repossess the properties. Are you going to do